Recently, during a conversation on Twitter, a friend of mine had said that he felt the church is creeping more into government. And I asked him for some examples, and he said the examples he gave was that the presidential candidates are asked what their favorite Bible verse is. The words "In God We Trust" are put on money. The planning to defund parenthood, and swearings over a Bible. As I would imagine, he means oath of office or something like that. I know that other people make the argument that the separation of church and state is not being followed, and this is my take on that. This country is America. It was founded on Christian principles because it was founded by Christians, especially the Protestants that were seeking to leave the Catholic Church, which was heavily influencing the government at the time. There's most definitely a Christian influence on America, despite all the loud cries suggesting otherwise. So I looked at the census. It ended up being 2008 was the most recent information I had off of census.org. And in 2008, 76% of the United States was considered themselves Christian. That's both Protestant and Catholic, and all the different ranges within there. The next highest category was no religion specified, and that includes atheism, agnostic, and humanist, 15%. The next highest category of religion was Jewish, which is 1.5%. And next highest after that was half of that, which was 0.75% Muslim in 2008. That's still over 1 million people or so, 1.5 million people or so, at 0.75% of the population. So to break that down, if you have 20 people in a room, the chances are 15 of those will be Christian. Out of those same 20, chances are 3 of them will be agnostic, atheistic, or humanist, no religion specified. And then, going further, 3 out of 200 would be Jewish, and 3 out of 400 would be Muslim. 15 out of 20 are Christian. Obviously, the vast majority of Americans. So, because many of us consider ourselves Christian, most of us consider ourselves Christian, would we not want to elect people into office which hold the same values? So, my point the point that asking a presidential candidate what his favorite Bible verse is may not truly tell you everything about that candidate, but I can see why a candidate may want to respond to with something like that, and I can understand how a potential constituent would want to ask a potential person in office what their favorite Bible verse is. As far as having "In God We Trust" on our money, I think that is just, I don't see the harm in that. I don't see a problem with that. I think that's just because that's where we came from. And since still 3/4 of the country believes in God, trusts in God we trust, I really don't see the push to get rid of it, especially since many other, like Jewish religion, they believe in God. Muslims believe in God. It just happens to be Allah or Muhammad. As far as defunding Planned Parenthood, I don't necessarily see how that has to do with religion getting into the government. If anything, I think it is the religion of, or the church of Planned Parenthood tying itself to the government. So think of it this way: my taxes. What's a better way to explain this? Having people in having religious people in office is a good thing, since 85% of the country is religious. But that doesn't mean that the church is involved in government. There may be examples of nonprofit organizations lobbying for legislature, which is favorable to them, but that is in no way different than lobbyists such as NPR, National Public Radio, which receives over half of their funding from the government, or same thing from Planned Parenthood. Those are nonprofits which are putting a lot of their nonprofits into the government to get things directly from them, and in many cases, literal funds, money. My taxes going towards NPR, my taxes getting pulled out and then getting divvied to NPR or Planned Parenthood, is much less fair, in my mind, than me paying my taxes and from that taking a $20 bill out of my wallet, putting it in the offering plate, and that money going towards my church, which I choose to attend, which I have influence on what we discuss and where we put our money, for one thing. And part of that is going directly back into my daughter, who's learning abstinence, for example, at youth group Wednesday nights, which I'm not paying for, but the church together, collectively, through a tithe, is funding that. The church is not getting money from the government. Planned Parenthood is. And Planned Parenthood most definitely has a very specific focus. I don't happen to agree with it, but even if I did, I like NPR for the most part. But they should not be getting money from the government. They should be getting money from the people that like NPR, just like the church. I like my church. I'm going to give money there. My neighbor who doesn't like my church should not have to pay taxes for the church to be funded. So if you compare the Church of Christianity in general to the Church of Planned Parenthood or the Church of National Public Radio, I think they're drastically different, and we should treat them the same. We certainly aren't. Lastly, what was the last thing on here? Swearing is over a Bible. I think that most people, at least 85% of Americans, believe in something, some type of God, and most of them would value the Bible. And so personally, if I'm going to lie, I don't think putting my hand on the Bible is really going to dissuade me. But we have to have some type of symbolism which makes it more real for us. And while that isn't necessarily my thing, like I said, replacing it with the Quran or something is just silly, because that's 3 out of 400 people, where 15 out of 20 or even more respect the Bible. And I think it really makes no sense to get that out. And that's a very big difference between religion being a part of the lives of the people that are in government and in the country, as opposed to the church forcing its way into government, saying this is what the government needs to do. I don't see that happening. Our America is a Christian nation. Our government is primarily filled with people who value Christian principles. Our government is not deeply... My thing is that our government is not deeply in cahoots with the organization we consider the church, and nor should it be. So I agree. We shouldn't. The church and state should be separate, but I think that it is separate. But the difference that people may mistake is that religion is in the government because religious people are in the government, and there are religious people, especially Christians, in America because that's what it was founded on, and still 3/4 of Americans identify as Christians.